Good afternoon and happy Friday, faithful. Here we are, week 5 of the NFL season already. The Niners are headed off on a 2-game road trip to go play the Carolina Panthers this weekend, staying at the Greenbrier and then going on to Atlanta, where I will be in town, breaking that curse and getting that win. But we're focused on Carolina this week, and I am joined by my co-host, Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Jack is here as the other half of the Hammerheads show. Welcome to the program, Jack. How you feeling on this fine Friday?
Hey, it's Friday. You can't beat a Friday. It's sunny. It's beautiful. I'm outside in my new studio out here. You can't beat it.
Can't beat it. Absolutely not. I do love the new studio. It looks like you're in a lush paradise that all of us can be jealous of. When we get into the dark days of Portland, I'll be looking outside at what dreary weather I've got here, just jealous of what it is you're rolling with there in California. Let me tell you, December in Oregon gets dark, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank the people that are enthusiastically here in the chat. Obviously, Spy Nick Danger there doing the good deed, imploring the people at a loud volume to hit the like button. We got the Stivers 209 show coming in. The Niners will win. Let's go Niners. Charles Thurman making the prediction. Rob, go Niners 24-10. Kevin coming in from Glasgow says, what kind of trash did I have to watch on the television last night? He says, how did we lose to the Broncos after watching that awful display last night? Worst game I've ever seen. Feel like suing the NFL and Amazon. How can there be 6 fumbles, 7 field goals, and no touchdowns? I agree. Trash. Thank goodness I was playing poker last night, so I just had to watch that game in the background. I had something else to entertain me because that game certainly didn't. Raphael 5629er Sneakerhead here on the channel says, what's up, Rob, Jack, Sneakerheads, and everyone? We've got Prince KO Sneakerhead here on the channel saying, hey, guys, thank goodness it is effing Friday. Jan coming in. Let's go. Spy Nick Danger. We already said hello to George Soares coming in. What's up, Rob? What's up, George? Peter Lee. Lucas Pesci. All right, everybody is here. JMac49. John B. Chris Royal in the stream. Alan Eliza, I'm loving the enthusiasm. People love the show here with us, Jack, but it's not to hear me read out their comments. It's to hear you talking to me. So let's get to that, my friend. All right. The first piece to this is obviously a necessary one. Got to get into the injury update. Jack, can you tell us a little bit today about who's been listed as out for Sunday and who is going to be in that was on the practice report earlier this week?
Yeah, it's not much different than what we knew. Going, after Monday night, we knew that Eric Armstead was injured, and so were Javon Kinlaw. They're both out this week. The rest of that group that's out, I think, was pretty much already known. Ty Davis Price, we knew he was going to be out for a little while. Same with Tyler Kroft, Tarvarius Moore, Colton McKivitz, Trent Williams. All that group has all been kind of known that they were going to be out for a bit. So Nothing new other than Armstead and Kinlaw. The nice part is the 49ers don't have anybody listed as questionable or doubtful or anything else like that. Ross Dwelley returned in full today to practice, as well as Juwan Jennings. Danny Gray was back in full yesterday. And Nick Bosa took Wednesday off, but that was just a rest day. So he isn't dealing with any kind of injury at all. So 49ers are pretty healthy for the most part with the same group that they had going into the game against Los Angeles, with the exception of Eric Armstead.
You absolutely like to see Ross Dwelley back in there. I feel like that's an underrated position, having him available, in that had it been Ross Dwelley running the pattern where Jimmy overthrows Warner, where Warner takes the post, and it looks like Jimmy's expecting the out there, not the out, but the corner end zone. I would think Ross Dwelley might have made that catch. The dude's got an incredible wingspan and seems to have the hands to be able to come down with it. That, again, feels like an underrated player to have available for this one.
Yeah, no, it's good to have Dwelley out there. I know he was on the field a little bit on Monday night as well. In regards to that play you're talking about, Jimmy Garoppolo, I put up something last night. He needs to be able to throw a deep ball that doesn't require his receivers to twist and turn like they're doing the dance out there.
So true. Put it on him. Put it on them. I'm telling you. All right. So how concerning is the absence of two players in the same position group coming up on a road trip where, you're looking at potentially having to play Carolina, not potentially, having to play Carolina and then Atlanta on the road 2 weeks in a row, having Kinlaw and Armstead most likely out for both of those games. How concerning do you think that should be for 49er faithful?
I look at it. I'm not overly concerned about it. I see a defense that went out, against Denver and held them to less than what was it, just over. I don't even know if it was 3 yards a carry, just over 3 yards a carry, 3.1, 3.2 yards per carry in Denver on that Sunday night game. The only reason they got over 100 yards was because they had 33 carries, which goes back. That's an offensive thing, not because really of the defense, it was because the offense for the 49ers never forced them to not stop trying to run the ball. I think the run defense is going to be fine. The question mark around that is really falls more back towards the 49ers offense. We can get into that in a minute.
Absolutely. Whether they can possess the ball. I see a question in the comments that does beg the question whether or not George Soros coming in. Rob, is Jason Verrett going to play this week? Your gut on whether we see Jason Verrett or Jimmy Ward, has that been announced yet as to whether they will be activated for this game?
I don't believe that Verrett's going to play. I don't think that I'm not sure if Ward has a chance still or not, but Verrett is somebody that I think they're keeping him for a couple weeks further down the road.
I'd be super surprised if we saw Jason Verrett. If Jimmy Ward is ready to go, I will not be surprised at all if he's out there. If I remember correctly, those types of elevations are typically made on Saturday of game week. Is that correct?
That's correct. The elevation would be on Saturday. That's when they'd make that announcement. But I don't see it with Verrett. I think Verrett's a guy they want to be really cautious with bringing him back. They don't really need him as much as they need. No, same thing with Jimmy Ward. But I think Ward will kind of fits into some of the things that they're doing on defense, maybe a little bit better than another outside corner would be. Yeah,
that makes sense. Absolutely. When you're looking at the injuries that we talked about just a moment ago, Javon Kinlaw, Eric Armstead, are there long-term concerns for each of them? I want to clarify that it is a foot injury for Eric Armstead, but it is to the opposite foot of the one that he has the plantar fasciitis in. So slightly less concerning there, because that plantar fasciitis seems like one that will be a lingering injury for the remainder of the season. I hear from athletes it takes a long time for that truly to heal, and he's just not going to get that time off while in season. Feels like he'll have to fight through it. Javon Kinlaw, we're talking about that knee yet again that he had surgery on in the offseason.
Yeah, there's a possibility that Armstead will end up on IR, which would put him out for 4 weeks minimum. I think that Kyle Shanahan already announced today that they're both going to be out for both of these next two games. They're not going to be playing in Carolina or in Atlanta, so we won't see them. They're going to be on the injury report all throughout next week as well.
It makes sense if they're both dealing with, especially the knee injury, don't even have Kinlaw travel across country, right? Why risk the swelling that can occur in being up there at 50,000 feet or whatever, 30,000 feet, and put him in that risk, because it is a degenerative type of a knee issue that seems to be occurring there. That's one that feels like a long-term concern. I wanted to give the benefit of the doubt in the offseason that, hey, this surgery was necessary, had to shut down Kinlaw early last year in order to get this. To have it flare up so soon in the season feels to me like an acknowledgement that this probably is a lingering issue that was not rectified by this surgery. Maybe I'm being overly pessimistic there. How do you feel hearing this report, having the offseason surgery and now having to miss games?
I think it's definitely a negative. Javon Kinlaw was somebody who the 49ers were hoping that offseason surgery was going to rectify all of these issues that he's been having. It was a complete reconstruction. And so to have this setback taking place right now is definitely bad news for Javon Kinlaw and for the 49ers in some ways, just for the long-term ramifications of it. Maybe, hold on a second. It might not be the worst case scenario for the 49ers, because as a first round draft pick, he's very expensive. They might be able to get a lot of production for somebody that's not quite so expensive down the road as this thing continues to play out.
That is the other side, the cooler side of the pillow, if you will, Jack. Looking at the bright side on that one. I like it. I appreciate it. For those of you watching, do me that favor. Hit the like button down there. We are continuing on with some of your comments here in the chat. John B. Sneakerhead here on the channel says, Baker is playing worse than Kyle Allen was the year we blew the Panthers out. Do you guys see a path to a similar result? To remind people, that result was 51-13 in 2019. Jack, you see any chance that we get rolling like that?
I don't see the 49ers putting up 50 on the Panthers, but I could see a situation where they put up for the 49ers, if they can get to 30 right now, you're talking about a blowout, right? Because they've only gotten to 27 is the high so far. If they can get to 30, we're talking about a big day for the 49ers. So I could see where they might get to 30 or 31 because of the turnovers that we see from the Panthers. That's been the Panthers' big bugaboo on offense. Baker Mayfield has stunk, but beyond Baker Mayfield not being good, they've turned the ball over way too much to win games.
And I am with you that I believe the 49ers may put up above 30 on this one. 51 is a big game, right? That's one of those you just can't call out. If you make a prediction of 51 and get it right, man, go play the lottery because that is a good call. All right, so it did seem that, for Kinlaw, they were pushing him to be ready for L.A., and then Shanahan today was talking about now that he didn't make L.A., he's probably out for those 2 weeks. As you said, he listed him as being in the same boat as Eric Armstead, most likely to miss both of those games. Do you think that it is? I mean, I try to be hopeful about this. I really am rooting for Javon Kinlaw. I want him to be successful. I don't want this to turn into one of those stories that, gets brought up over and over about a wasted draft pick, because I feel that doesn't acknowledge the player, the individual, or the circumstance. Do you think it's a case where the 49ers may be looking at the next two games as much more winnable than the game against LA, that they were pushing for Javon to play in that one because they felt they needed his talent, and may feel a little more confident going into Carolina, going into Atlanta without Javon Kinlaw, and saying, hey, we'll give him 3 weeks of rest right now, hope that heals the knee and allows him to play the rest of the way and sort of minimize the risk?
I think they have the depth to get through this period. This is a very strong defense, and they're going these next 2 weeks. They're going to, Carolina runs the ball. It actually runs the ball better than the 49ers do. We're going to get into that as well, too, when we get to the offensive side of the ball. They're averaging 4.5 yards per carry. 49ers are at 4.3. That number for the 49ers is even worse. We'll talk about why in a minute. But to be at 4.5 yards, the 49ers could struggle here against this offense but again, it's going to require the 49ers offense to struggle, if that makes sense.
It does. It does indeed, Jack. There are a couple other comments that are asking specific questions that I absolutely do want to get into. One of them was about Danny Gray, asking specifically if you think he's going to get any playing time this week, Jack. Alan Elizer coming in, Sneakerhead, here on the channel.
Yeah, he's active and healthy, and I would expect him to get on the field. But they had brought up last week because he was down. They typically have been bringing up Malik Turner on game day, but because of Gray being injured, they brought up Turner plus Willie Snead last week. So I would expect for Gray to get on the field. He might not see a lot of snaps, but I would expect to see him on the field a little bit here this week.
That's a positive, man. I really want to see Danny Gray used. I would hate to think that just because we had the injury to Trey Lance that you sort of give up on getting that player involved. That much speed is just dangerous. Speed kills. There's a reason for that saying. I'm a big fan of it, and I would like to see that speed within a Shanahan offense because it feels like minus Danny Gray, we're missing it a little bit. All right, let's transition to acknowledge some of these players that have, in fact, filled in at some of these positions where the 49ers have had injury. What's been your impression of everyone stepping up on the interior of the defensive line unit to this point? And who's impressed you the most from that group so far?
Well, that group's been really solid. Kevin Givens is a guy who, for whatever reasons, kind of radar during his time in San Francisco, but you can go back to 2020 and really see him make a lot of plays in the interior. There was a point in 2020 where the 49ers started to play Kevin Givens more than Javon Kinlaw. That's 2 years ago. And he was doing, and we were seeing that. You go back to their win against the Rams in Los Angeles, and you remember in that game, Javon Kinlaw gets the pick six, right?
Right.
But what missed it in that is that, he had the pick six, but he actually had fewer snaps than Kevin Givens in that game. So Kevin Givens is a guy who's kind of been hanging around the edges of this defense for a long time. He's been given a chance, and he's very similar to DJ Jones in stature and height.
Shorter guy, more stout.
Yeah, he's not quite as wide. He's a little quicker. He's really good though in the interior. He's filled in really good. Hassan Ridgeway had a nice game. I think he had a sack on Monday night against the Rams. He's been pretty good in there as well. So they have a number, and then you also can put in if you need to Charles Omenihu is going to be the guy who, he's going to rush from everywhere across. He can rush inside and outside in pass rushing situations. Same thing with Kerry Hyder. They just have so many guys that they can move around, and to have a defensive tackle missing some time isn't quite as big with this defense because of the way that they can move players around.
It is finally at a point where the depth of that unit is so solid. Not to say that it couldn't still be decimated by injury. This is the NFL. Anything can happen, but it is deep enough to withstand a loss of 2 stars within it, right? And that's an impressive unit to be able to hold up to that. I agree about the Hassan Ridgeway signing feeling like a real bargain at this point. He's played incredibly well, and Kevin Givens does have that very fast get off, the first step. He seems to be consistently launching off of the line, and it gives him that advantage against the offensive players there. Gizmo Maltese coming in with the super chat. What's wrong with the offense? Theory, we lack mismatches. Kittle was a mismatch. Debo, great run after the catch, but not a mismatch. Same with Ayuk. Thoughts? What do you think about the mismatch, lack thereof, I should say?
I think this one, if you want to know what's wrong with the offense, I said this quite a bit last week. I think I might have said it when we spoke, and I know I said it on another show that I did with Larry Kruger on his channel. The 49ers' problem on offense is behind the center. The quarterback position has held the 49ers back. That's why they only scored. Part of the reason why they only scored 10 points in Chicago was because of the play at the quarterback position. I know it was raining. People keep saying it was a monsoon, and it was wet, but it wasn't a monsoon until early in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
The week in Denver, the quarterback held the offense back. Last week, again, the offense to a certain extent held the offense back to an extent. Wasn't able to hit a deep throw to Charlie Warner, and the other part of it is you got to give a lot of credit for the game on Monday night to the offensive performance, to the guys that you're talking about being mismatches here, Debo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Those two had 152 receiving yards on Monday night. Out of that 152 receiving yards, 138 of those came after the catch.
That's wild.
The average depth of target for Debo Samuel, 2 yards. The average depth of target for Brandon Ayuk on Monday night, 1 yard.
Debo just has to say to himself, with Jimmy coming back in, the quick release and getting him that ball close to the line of scrimmage, he's like, all right, it's time to eat. This is it. This is what I do well. Let me truck some fools here. Let me run through Jalen Ramsey making his business decision. It's a beautiful thing to watch, but it is a fascinating offensive strategy, right? It does feel as though defenses will be able to do, if we don't shift this, if George Kittle doesn't have an emergence, and I know we're going to talk specifically about Kittle later on, so I'm just teasing that. We're not getting into it, but it does feel as if we don't begin to push the ball down the field, defenses will absolutely be able to do what they did to Jimmy Garoppolo last season and crowd the line of scrimmage. It doesn't feel as if we have quite developed an answer for that yet. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Yeah, and it's a fair statement because the quarterback's not putting the ball on the guys that are running wide open down the field. That's why we're not seeing it. Debo Samuel wide open against Denver, and he's spinning around and has to catch the ball falling to the ground instead of scoring a touchdown. Last week, the one to Warner. There's multiple examples of this over the first 4 games, whether it's Garoppolo or Lance.
Absolutely. That's the key point is we're talking about the quarterback position as a whole, not one or the other, but both have struggled within the start of the season. Clearly, there are reasons for both, and one would expect both to have a little bit of rust for different reasons. You can hope that with Jimmy Garoppolo not having a preseason, he will continue to look a little bit sharper going forward. I want to say thank you to Randall Riley, sneakerhead here on the channel, coming in to say, hammer that like button. I love a good pun. So throw it out there, put that like on the video. All right, so let's continue on here. We have a super chat coming in from Chris Royal before we get to the next topic. Chris Royal said, Debo and Ayuk are mismatches strictly based on their ability to create extra yards. Yeah, Debo against any linebacker or defensive back, I feel pretty good about his ability to break at least one single tackle, if not more. And Brandon Ayuk, with that incredible catch radius and ability to run very crisp routes that I have seen, I would also put him as a mismatch against a lot of defenders. I expect both of them to continue to have great seasons and will not be surprised when they both crest 1,000 yards. I think I was wrong about Kittle on that one, but again, teasing a topic to come later.
No, these guys are very good receivers. They just need to get some more opportunities. This offense doesn't give them a lot, but they need to get some more.
Yes, got to get them more opportunities. All right, bringing in a comment here from Ryan Anthony before we transition. Rob, this is a kind of Shanahan system to run the ball, whether it be between the tackles or a quick out to the sidelines against the DB. So talking about extending the run game with a lot of those passes to Deebo Samuel. Absolutely true. It is a way to spread the defense out. It is a way to get the ball into space and allow your runners to do the rest. But I would like to see this run game going. We're actually going to talk about that one coming up in a little bit. Let's talk about a different category. Let's talk about our defense versus the Carolina offense, specifically as it relates to Nick Bosa and his feelings for Baker Mayfield. Do you think that this is an added motivation week for Nick Bosa? Is he coming out trying to bury Baker Mayfield?
Baker. Yeah, no, this is going to be, he played it pretty cool on a Wednesday when he met with us in the locker room. But he's ready to go out there and he wants to drill this guy and just put him into the ground.
Yes.
You know that he wants a big game here against Carolina.
Absolutely wants a big game against Carolina. I hope to see him plant the flag yet again. I thought that was a spectacular sack celebration. You want to see the sacks racking up. George pointing out, Rob, I see 3 sacks for Bosa. I would be thrilled by that because I want to point out Bosa is clearly on a very impressive pace, leading the NFL with 6 sacks to this point. My question is, can he keep it up this week? Can he continue his progression towards my call out of a 20-sack season? Do you think, like George, he's in for a multiple sack performance against Baker?
I don't know if he's going to get multiple sacks this week, but he's going to get one. I think so. The Panthers have given up 11 sacks so far this season. I can't see how Bosa's not going to get at least one. He's just been so dominant to start the season off.
Super dominant. What do you think of Kyle Shanahan coming out to specifically talk about Bosa being held? Does that change the way in which the game is called? Is it possible that we actually see a few more holding penalties against ourselves on offense because Kyle Shanahan threw that out there? Like, I feel like you start calling out the refs, you might expect a little bit of blowback.
It goes both ways, right? It goes both ways on that. And I think part of the problem when it comes to Bosa is he really at times really likes to use that rip move. And that's a move in which, because you're going low, though, it actually helps the offensive lineman hold you because they can't get called on some of those plays. If you actually look at the rule book, and Rich Madrid, who's on Twitter and has his own stuff, he explains it really well. And so that's, I think, part of the problem when it comes to Bosa with the holds is that he does that rip so often and it's not a hold the way the guys are grabbing him.
Right. I mean, it appears to be a hold sometimes on a still shot, but oftentimes that patented look of someone with their arm right across Bosa's chest plate is, again, because he's dipping below them and it naturally kind of catches their arm like that. And some of those are technically not holding penalties, even though they would appear to be, although it does seem like Bosa gets held more than other players. Is that your impression as well? Do you share Kyle Shanahan's concerns that Bosa is held more frequently, or is that blown out of proportion in your mind?
No, I think he gets held more often than what's being called. I mean, they could probably call an extra 2 or 3 holds a game on the opposition just based off of what's happening to Bosa out there on pass rushes other than what I was just explaining.
Unfortunately, I doubt we see a huge uptick in those holding penalties this week, but maybe we can be optimistic that 1 or 2 of them over the course of the season will actually get called. In speaking about Baker Mayfield, what's your impression of how he's been with Carolina so far this season?
He's been awful. He's completed less than 55% of his passes. He's 28th in the league in net yards per attempt. He's only averaging 5.2. The only quarterback in the league that has more of his yards after the catch than Baker Mayfield is Jimmy Garoppolo. So he's not pushing the ball down the field, doesn't have that ability. And then also, I think the offensive line hasn't been very good around him either. Like I just mentioned, he's been sacked 11 times this year. So he's not, given a lot of time either.
Yeah, no, that doesn't help when you're not given a lot of time. You have a bad offensive line. You're a little bit of a shorter quarterback. And so that makes it even more difficult to deal with pressure in your face. And it has not been a good season so far. Speaking of what has been a good season so far for the 49ers, the freaking defense has just been amazing. I came out predicting top 3, saying, hey, this could be best defense in the league. And even I'm surprised by the way in which the defense has played to this point. Will the 49ers successfully pack their defense for this road trip? Are they going to show up against Carolina?
I think so. I don't see any reason to believe that they're all of a sudden just going to fall off a cliff. I think this is a really good group. Typically, that's the saying, right? You're asking if they're going to pack them. That's typically the saying is that, defenses travel well. Pack up your defense. It's going to go just fine with you wherever you take it. It doesn't matter if it's in a dome or if it's outside or whatever. If it's good weather, bad weather, defense is usually going to travel well. And I think that'll be the case with this team. They're just so dominant. They have so much depth. I think that's the other part of this is that they're just so deep that if one guy slips a little bit, there's 4 other guys behind him to step in and take their place.
It really is remarkable. Is it too early to be recognizing how great this defense is? Or is that appropriate to say, hey, listen, we're not saying that this is a complete season yet, but you have to acknowledge just how dominant these 4 games have been? Or is that blowing smoke? Is it too small of a sample size? Like, where do you find yourself when you look at this defense and try to put a whole season type of a label on it far too early?
It's far too early, but I put this team amongst the best that I've seen. When you can go back to the 81 and 84, 88 defenses, and those were all really good defenses. But, the 94 defense with Deion Sanders, that was a group that was fun to watch. That's for me, at least. That's where I went to on Monday night, watching them dominate against the Rams. I was looking forward to watching them come on the field, which I haven't felt that way about a 49ers defense since 94. I wanted to see that group with Deion Sanders. I wanted to see if Deion was going to pick it off and do the high step into the end zone and all that kind of stuff. I know the 11 and the 12 and the 13 defenses were pretty good. The 19 defense was pretty good. This defense, if they continue on right now, is going to be the best of all of them. And it won't even be close when it's all said and done if they can continue doing what they've done so far.
The yards per play that they are allowing is staggering, in particular when you take into account the fact that offenses have progressed in the way that they have. When you compare it to the best defense that the 49ers have ever put on the field, to your point, it stacks up and it's ahead of that defense at this point, acknowledging that the competition gets a little bit stiffer. But one of those stars of the early part to the season, George points out, is Talanoa Hufanga, asking Rob, what's your thoughts on Huff? I have to say, man, I was medium warm on Huff coming in, thinking, hey, that's a suitable guy to have as competition for the spot. But I really believe we should probably draft someone for the position, maybe bring in a free agent. I was preaching competition at the spot, and that when we decided not to bring in competition, it was the wrong call. I was critical of the 49ers and saying, you've gifted this spot to Talanoa Hufanga. It feels like we have done that in the past. Akello Witherspoon would have been an indication of someone where it was like, we see a little bit of good stuff. He can start next year. I was wrong. Talanoa Hufanga was absolutely ready for that opportunity. The Niners knew what they had in him, and he has been a stud to this point. I see a lot of similarities. The speed he moves at, because he's following his instincts, and that first step is so quick, it's like he's flying around the field as fast as someone who has bigger wheels than he does. It is the mental aspect to the game that has me so excited about Huff. What's been your impression of the, I don't know, maybe the MVP of the defense to this point?
No, I think you hit on it all. They talk about instincts, right? That's kind of been the thing on Hufanga. Oh, he just plays with great instincts. I think that's overrated. The instincts part of it when it comes to Hufanga. I think the reason Talanoa Hufanga has great instincts is because he has a great work ethic and he knows what's coming because he's studying the heck out of the film ahead of time. And all those reps he got last year, plus the work that he's been putting in on the side to understand, he recognizes things on the field right away, which is what allows him to explode and make a play like what he saw on Monday night. He talked about it. He saw a little bit different of a release from the tight end that keyed him to what was coming, which allowed him to fire and go jump that route, because if he reads it wrong and he jumps it, that guy could have just kept on going down the sideline for a wheel for a touchdown, right? So there was something that he felt, he didn't say what it was, but he noticed something that was different in that route that allowed him to jump it and go the other way.
That's a great call out. When we use that phrase instincts, at least with Huff, in part, we are referring to that fact that he studies film, that he knows what's coming. He sees what the offense is doing and is reacting earlier because of that film study, because of fundamentally understanding what the opposing team is attempting to do there and then making the counter move to that. I definitely want to continue on. Oh, no, did I lose? I lost the comment. It's one of those, but we got a super chat. Chris Royal coming in.
Do you remember?
I don't, but I'll find it. I will definitely find it. Chris Royal says, it's fair to say that they're on pace right now. This is talking about the defense. Absolutely on pace to be a very, very special team. I see this as, again, we have bigger tests on the horizon, but when I look at the roster and you called it out, that depth, it gives me optimism because of the depth. They'll be able to sustain at least a suitable level and end this season as a very impressive defense. In particular, if the offense plays complementary football, gets the run game going, dominates time of possession, these things will really start to tilt the stats in favor of the 49ers, because against LA, they lost time of possession 35-25. If they get rolling against Carolina and put up 35 points, have 35 minutes in time of possession, we could see these stats really starting to get skewed.
Absolutely. And I think that's the piece here. And when you look at the depth really quick, I don't know if I said this already, but like Jason Verrett, for example, I don't expect him to come in and be the starter, but the 49ers have two really good cornerbacks, right, already that are in front of him, in Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Mosley. I don't see him stepping in the starting lineup and bumping either of those guys out of the way. But what he brings is Charvarius Ward and Emmanuel Mosley have both missed time over the last 2 years. They've missed multiple games in each of the last 2 years. So, if I'm the 49ers and shucks, Emmanuel Mosley goes down for a week, I'm bringing in Jason Verrett to replace him. I mean, come on. Jason Verrett was part of the reason why this defense was so good in 2020 when Richard Sherman went down. So that's where this depth of this team could really come into play.
Absolutely. All right, I found the comment. You knew I was going to find it. Jan coming in to say, in recent years, the defense has outshined the offense. The offense is just as talented as the defense. I thought Kyle was an offensive genius. It's kind of a question. It's more of a statement, but the question is true, and it's a fair one. First and foremost, I have to ask if you agree with that first part of the statement. Is the offense as talented as the defense? Are there as many talented players at the skill positions on offense as we have on the defensive side of the ball?
For the most part, yes. Yes.
Do you then see that weak point being what you said earlier, that it really falls on the player at quarterback, that if it weren't for that position, we might see an offense that clicked at or above the level the defense is clicking at right now?
Absolutely. The difference between the 49ers offense and the 49ers defense is they have an all-pro middle linebacker in Fred Warner. He's the quarterback of the defense. You can't even say close to that about what they have on the offensive side of the ball at quarterback. Kyle Shanahan is an offensive genius when you look at the way he schemes things up. Where he's failed since he's been in San Francisco is his inability to figure out the quarterback spot. They got Garoppolo. They realized that Garoppolo wasn't the long-term solution. They went out and got Trey Lance. Is Trey Lance going to be the long-term solution? We don't know, because he was supposed to be getting a lot of reps right now, but he's hurt. And so that's what, if Kyle Shanahan ends up failing in San Francisco, it's going to be because of his failure to identify the quarterback position and get it right.
Oh, that is such a shame to think of that happening, because you do go back and watch these plays. You watch the guys that are running open. You watch the play design itself, and you could see how if you hit some of these, it could open it up wide open. And yet we haven't been able to do so. Hopefully this is the season where it starts to click. I don't know. It's tough to imagine Jimmy Garoppolo taking a huge step forward, but if he knocks off the rust and he plays efficiently, again, that gets back to the complementary football aspect. Feels like we could see success. Still talking about defense against Carolina, specifically looking at how bad Carolina has been. Is the offense truly one of the worst in the leagues? One of the worst in the league? I believe they're ranked 32nd. Is that an appropriate ranking, or is that due to the competition and games that have played out so far through the first quarter of the season?
It's primarily due to their own, a part of their own doing. They've just struggled to stay on the field. They've averaged less than 5 plays per possession this season. That's worse than the 49ers. That's 32nd in the NFL. So that's brutal. Where they're down, not able to stay on the field. Their turnovers aren't awful. They've only turned the ball over 6 times, which puts them in the middle of the pack at 16th, but they aren't taking the ball away on defense. So, when you're not able to convert on third down, and on top of that, you're turning the ball over, you're going to have a hard time winning. And in particular, in the NFL, you've got to be able to throw the ball. And their quarterback, like I said, 53%, I think is what he is right now in completion percentage, 54, right around that range, 54.7, excuse me. But on top of that, he's been sacked a high rate of times, 8.6% of his time he's dropping back, he's getting sacked, and they're not holding on to the ball and not keeping possession.
That's not a recipe for success on offense, Jack. That sounds like things that add up to a freaking disastrous outcome.
Well, remember after the Denver game, how bad the offense was in that game, and there were a lot of questions about different things on offense. And Kyle Shanahan said,
distinctly remember that.
We couldn't run the ball because we weren't getting on converting on first down.
Right.
Remember him saying that? Well,
yes.
I was reading some stuff from a reporter out in Carolina, and Matt Rule said the same thing this week about last week. It's hard to run the ball when you can't stay on the field, and they can't stay on the field. And it's a lot of the 40. Here's the thing. The 49ers and the Panthers offenses aren't that much different from one another. They're really not. The difference between these two teams is the defenses of the 49ers is a little bit better than Carolina, but their offense, as bad as Carolina's offense has been, you know what? They're actually scoring more points per possession than the 49ers are this year. It's wow. It's by hundreds of a it's 1.47, I think, for Carolina, 1.45 for the 49ers, but still, and that's when you're looking at this game, it's all about the 49ers offense, and if they can actually participate in this game to the level that they should be able to.
Yeah, you saw Matt Mayoko in today's presser, teasing the idea of, you think maybe Carolina's regretting passing on you, Jimmy? Were they one of the teams that were really interested in your services? And the honest answer is probably maybe a little bit, but he's not playing that much better than Baker, right? I mean, if you take that Denver game, that was a pretty atrocious performance. So when you average it out, not fantastic just yet. All right, we got a couple more topics to hit and a super chat. Sean951Niners, sneakerhead here on the channel, says, if we end the season as the number 1 defense after playing KC, the Chargers, the Rams, Tampa Bay, then we are winning number 6. Green Bay and the rest of the NFC doesn't matter. Bills versus Niners. Watch out. Here comes number 6. I like the prediction. Honestly, if we've got the number 1 defense, I feel good about the prediction. I don't think that's too far out there.
No, I don't either. I think if this defense continues, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I agree with what John is saying here. If this defense can continue at this rate, when you look at what the rest of the NFC is like, it's going to be the Niners and the Eagles in the NFC Championship game, and the 49ers probably playing against somebody in the Super Bowl.
Yes, and Sean points out, Jimmy G is playing for 2023. He has incentive to ball. Yes, he does. A lot of money is on the line for him. All right, one thing that I want to talk about that would be critical to getting this offense going would be Kittle's usage. By the way, before we get to that, we got about 20 minutes left in the show. Just want to say Jack's information is down below so that you can go subscribe to him on YouTube. His channel is phenomenal. The film breakdowns, great. When you see all of his shows, all of his guests, great content. And you can bookmark the link to the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. All of that is down below in the description Oh, by the way, don't forget to hit your like button here on the channel and subscribe to this channel as well. But let's talk a little bit about George Kittle's usage. It is atrocious at this point. I predicted Kittle would have a 1,000-yard receiving season. He is not on track for 1,000 yards as of this moment. I still think it's possible. Couple 100-yard games, and boom, he's back on track. But what is your opinion of why Kittle has not been used successfully to this point?
They're utilizing him as a blocker. And there's been the uproar that this has created this week has just, I get it if you're not watching the game in a close manner. Like watching, I get watching the game and you're watching. I watched the game with everybody else, but then when I sit back and I didn't understand exactly why, but I know I saw him pass blocking a few times in the game. I didn't know all the extent, and I saw them run quite a few screens and all those kind of things. So I went back and I looked at this thing. Kittle was on the field for 27 of 28 dropbacks for Jimmy Garoppolo. The only one that he wasn't on the field for was the one at the end of the first half when he just threw the ball into the stands to end in the first half. Of those 27 snaps, George Kittle his primary responsibility was to block, whether he's pass blocking or blocking for a screen, 10 times. 10 times. That's 37% roughly. Now, that leaves 17 plays in which he ran a route. On one of those plays, Jimmy Garoppolo scrambled. So that leaves 16 times that George Kittle ran a route in the game and Jimmy Garoppolo actually threw a pass. You want to know who the leading target was on those 16 passes? It was George Kittle with 4.
Wow.
Next up was Deebo Samuel with 3. And then there was Juwan Jennings with 3. And then you have Kyle Juszczyk, Jeff Wilson Jr., Ray McLeod, and Ross Dwelly. So this whole thing is I get it. People want to look at PFF and they look at, without doing the work, you look at PFF and you see PFF says that he's only been in pass blocking 6 times in the first 2 games he's played. But PFF is not looking at the whole picture. I don't think. I think they're way off on that number.
Yeah.
There's times like, when they're running a screen out to the left side. Jordan Elliott put a video of this up yesterday on Twitter where he showed George Kittle being used as a pass blocker, and then he showed him being utilized as on a screen going out and blocking. I guess you can technically say he's running a route there, but anybody that knows anything about football knows that he's not running a route there, that he's running to go block for somebody. And so that's the difference. And I think that's why you're seeing I know one of the things with George Kittle that's come up is he's getting paid a lot of money because he's being paid to make plays. He's being paid to be a playmaker. No, George Kittle's being paid a lot of money to help the 49ers win games.
Right.
And they're playing without Trent Williams right now. Mike McGlinchey, that he struggles a little bit at times in pass protection. You're going up against the Rams defense that is going to be pretty good against on the pass rush. So why not let him do what he does best? And he had a couple of really nice reps early in the game as a pass blocker for Jimmy Garoppolo on third down conversions. Did a good job of opening up, those screens that were so successful. Some of that was George Kittle getting out there and helping out with those as well. So I don't have any problem with George. I don't play fantasy football. So to me, if George Kittle doesn't catch a pass, I don't really care. I suck at fantasy football. So, it's just one of those things.
I do too, because Kittle's on 3 of my teams this year.
So see, you are more invested in George Kittle's usage than I am.
Yep. I'm very invested in it. Okay. So you've done it. I mean, astute observations there, Jack. And I do think that a lot of what Kittle is used for, if you're not looking at it intelligently, you might think he's running a route, but really he's running interference on someone else's route there. And after this observation, I agree with you. Kittle is being paid all that money to help the 49ers win, and they will use him however they see fit, whatever adds the greatest value to the offense. My question to you is, after doing this little research project and realizing why Kittle is not getting the targets that he should, do you feel that the 49ers are, in fact, utilizing Kittle in the way that best helps them to win games right now, acknowledging that it's a huge blow to have Trent Williams out and then lose Colton McKivitz? And to your point, Mike McGlinchey may struggle even fully healthy, but is probably still knocking off some rust.
Yeah, I think he's being used fine, because what the way that they're using him is they are taking full advantage of all of George Kittle's abilities,
his skill set.
And that's your job as a coach, is to be able to take your guys and use them to the best of their abilities, or use their full skill sets to help your team win. And that's what they've done. At least that's what they did on Monday night against the Rams.
I dig it. And if George Kittle gets 1 foot in 2 inches earlier, number one, I win a fantasy game that I lost. And number two, we're probably having a different conversation, because it would feel like not a breakout game, but at least a solid game for George Kittle. That one catch would have been the difference between being more critical and feeling a bit more optimistic. Yes. I want to transition a little bit to what I think will help the 49ers win this game first and foremost, and that is the run game. I am concerned about the defense having played 74 snaps the last couple of games. I'm concerned that it's only 6 days. I know that doesn't seem like much to lose 1 day of preparation, but NFL players and coaches talk about it all the time. It's a big difference to play on Monday night and then play Sunday instead of Sunday to Sunday. That extra day of rest means something, especially when you add in a cross-country flight from California on out to Carolina to go play the Panthers. So I believe that the 49ers must get to their quote-unquote magic number, which is getting the run game going. Do you believe that this is one of the bigger keys to success for the 49ers, and will they have success against Carolina?
Yeah, I think the run game is a big part of what the 49ers want to do, and it's a big part of who they are. The better they run the ball, the more they win games. That's been proven out. They're just not running the ball very well at the time. And so I think that's where you see the screens are actually an extension. Somebody mentioned this earlier. The screen game is like an extension of the run game. So sure, it's not a run, it's a pass, but it's an extension. You see that even in the high school and college level. A lot of schools are doing that, where they just, you don't have the best offensive linemen. So what do? You throw a bunch of screens and let your skill position players work on the edges for 4 or 5 yards and just work the ball down that way. And that's what you see kind of happening with the 49ers right now. Their running game has not been good since the end of the first quarter of week 2.
Yes, I would like to see the 49ers get rolling here. I pulled this stat that was put out. There's a run stat that shows the percentage of runs versus passes and the resulting wins and losses for the 49ers. The percentage is of run-pass ratio. When the Niners run at least 56% of their plays under Shanahan, so when they run 56% of the time, they're 16-0. In all the other games under Shanahan, they're 29-44. Is that the type of stat that is misleading because you get to run more in games where you're up big, and so it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy? Or will the 49ers set out in this one thinking to themselves, this is one of those games where we're shooting for 30?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it is one of those stats where when you're winning games, you're going to tend to run the ball more often. Like, for example, Seattle, they ran the ball 45 times in that game, but they were ahead throughout, so it allows you to continue on the ground. You don't have to try to throw the ball so much. When you're picking up first downs, it also allows you to run the ball more often and those types of things. So to an extent, I do think that if they can get themselves to where they're running the ball 30 to 35 times a game, they're going to win a lot more often than if they are only getting to 20. Just because depending on what they're doing with the quarterback, if the quarterback's throwing a ton of screens like he did on Monday night,
right,
you're not putting the ball at risk quite as often, right? Because those throws usually don't get intercepted unless you're Matthew Stafford 2 years in a row at Levi Stadium. but most of the time those aren't going to be interceptions. So I think that I think there's definitely something to what you're saying.
Were you at all surprised? This is a one-off question, Jack, but I was surprised by this, and I'm wondering if you were at all surprised by the fact that what seemed like the most obvious way for the 49ers to attack the Rams was yet again leaning on the quick passing game. Short passes seemed very predictable and yet continues to function. Are you surprised by that there's not more trickery occurring between Shanahan and McVay? Or am I missing something?
Well, I think the reason it works for the 49ers, or why they've been able to kind of get them to get it to work against the Rams, is they do enough other stuff. Their running game on Monday night, they struggled at times, but they were able to hit the one big one. The quarterback early on in that first possession, they didn't run screens in that first possession. The quarterback was able to pick up third downs on just, straight dropbacks and hitting Juwan Jennings a couple of times and those types of things. So I think that when you do the things that the Flyers do in terms of the way they move players around, it makes it hard to stop a screen, because, like, for example,
Yes.
they're running screens to Brandon Ayuk where he's motioning from the left side to the right and he's catching the ball on the move and running a screen on the left side, like on one of those plays. That's basically just a really long sweep play. And those kind of things are the way that it helps.
Tough to defend, absolutely spreading out the defense. Do you think that, last question on the run game, do you think that the 49ers will involve other backs in this one, or is it going to be the Jeff Wilson Jr. show again?
I think it's primarily going to be the Jeff Wilson Jr. show. I don't know what it is about Jordan Mason. I don't think they believe in him in pass protection. They mentioned it. It kind of came out, prior to week 2 about, the need for those guys to be able to do everything. Then Shanahan kind of walked it back. But I would be remiss if I didn't say that I noticed that when they put Tevin Coleman in the game, they never ran the ball with Tevin Coleman. They were throwing the ball with Tevin Coleman in the game, which was why I thought they were brought in Marlon Mack to begin with, was because they wanted a veteran to help with pass protection. Because I think Ty Davis Price, even though he's a younger guy, he's pretty solid in pass protection. I remember he got into some really good matchups during training camp with Fred Warner and those guys in blitz pickup. But I think there's something to do with Jordan Mason and his blitz and his pass blocking that's keeping him from having their belief that he can go out there and make the plays.
Seems like the only rational reason for it, and one of the supporting pieces of evidence of bringing in a guy like Tevin Coleman, is he can be trusted for that. Yeah. Want to bring in one comment before we go to the game prediction. JMac49 Sneakerhead here on the channel says, so much negativity in the chat. Get over it. Appreciate the team we have, and let's build on that. I have to say, JMac, I haven't seen the negativity, but I may have missed it. I acknowledge that there can be comments that aren't in there, but I will say, if there has been, it's misplaced. I was predicting we'd be at 2-2. Here we are. We're coming off a very exciting game against the Los Angeles Rams that we handled, a defense that could be number 1 in the league. It is time to be optimistic. It is time to believe that this freaking team can go somewhere. It's time to embrace what we're going through right now. Get behind your team. Realize that it's very likely we're coming into a game that we are looking to win. And that's what we're headed into last, is our game prediction. So it sets up to be a game that the 49ers should win handily, Jack. Will they?
Oh, well, here's my prediction. I think my final score prediction for this game is 49ers 17, Carolina Panthers 12.
17-12? That's closer than I want it to be, Jack.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not buying this offense right now from the 49ers. That's the whole reason. Carolina's defense has been somewhat solid. This game gets out of hand if the 49ers if the 49ers defense plays well, gives us the offense short fields, and they either get field goals or maybe a touchdown off of it, those kind of things. That's how this game gets out of hand. But if the 49ers don't first force turnovers, and this is just the 49ers offense against the Panthers offense, you know what I'm saying? Then I think this is like a 17-12 games, because I don't think either offense is really good enough to run away with it from the other. There's just too many little mistakes that keep getting made by the 49ers week in and week out.
There are these mistakes that continue to rise up. Most of these projections are the 49ers winning it handily, but Snacks comes in to agree with you. Jack says the game is going to be close, and Scooby Snacks knows what's up. Have to with a name like that. Definitely see some others a little closer. Randall Riley believing it'll be 17-10. I feel like this one sets up for the defense to roll. What you described as the way in which the 49ers can open this one up feels like it's on the horizon. Forcing turnovers, sacking Baker Mayfield, maybe a pick 6 in this one. I'm going to go pretty bold on it. I don't know that because of the higher score, I'm not sure it will be as much of a defensive route, but I'm going 31-13 on this. I'm going non-heart attack game because I need to not get new gray hairs after another freaking close one. My heart can't take it. anymore, Jack. I need something like what Elvis is predicting here, 31-9. So 31-13 feels like a good ass whooping.
Yeah, no, that would be a good one. 31-13 would be a good one. I mean, you look at it, and I gave you mine, but here's a couple of other things really quick on this. The Panthers have a number of guys that are going to be out, and one of those is that one of those guys who are kind of on. There's a couple of guys who are kind of on the edge that are really good defenders that are struggling as well. So I think who was it? Frankie Louvu and Xavier Woods have both been dinged up a little bit. They're on the questionable list. There's some things there for them that make me think that it could become the 49ers might get their offense in gear this game. And if the offense gets in gear, that's when you look at the 24 and 30 and the defense. I mean, I'm not totally against it. I just think that they need either the offense to finally click or the defense put them in position.
That makes sense. It's good that you are open to it because the people are calling for it. They say, Jack, you need to have more faith than that. 49ers will win big. So he's just admitted that, hey, it could absolutely skew that way. We got to close out on Jaguayo 56 Sneakerhead here on the channel coming in. Rob and Jack, I really hope we start integrating more juice into the offense. Feel a Kittle explosion coming soon. We need mistake-free offense, 23-14. I'm here for it. I need the Kittle scores for my fantasy teams, Jack, so I'm with this. Do you think that Juice will get a little more love going forward? Can he get multiple touches each game?
He should. Again, this is another one of those weird scenarios where the 49ers have a guy that's a really good playmaker that they just don't get the ball very much. And I really like Kyle Juszczyk as somebody that should get 4, 5, 6 touches a game. I mean, think about it this. Bill Walsh had a guy that played fullback by the name of Tom Rathman. Tom Rathman was good. Used like 4 or 5 times more a game than what we see from Kyle. There wasn't a game that went by where Tom Rathman didn't catch a pass and run the ball. It seemed like it was. You go back and look at his numbers from the late 80s and compare that to how little you see of Kyle Juszczyk, knowing the skill set that Kyle Juszczyk brings to this team.
Right.
It's wild.
It is wild, super wild. All right, Villain 510, I'm putting it perfectly. Loving the Hammerhead show. Thank you to you both. 24-21 Niners, Empire, baby. The Hammerhead show is epic. Always love having Jack Hammer on here. Thank you so much for your time. We got one super chat to hit on our way out here. Kevin coming in from Glasgow. Rob and Jack, the Panthers have 11 sacks compared to the average 6 of all the other teams. We need the O-line to show up and respect them. I'm going for 24-10. I am with this comment and CJ Gray's that says respect your opponent. I'm with these two. The 49ers cannot overlook Carolina. Carolina is going to be coming out with their backs against the wall. Matt Rule's job is on the line. Baker Mayfield's next contract is on the line. The Carolina Panthers have a lot to play for, and I still think that we have far more talent, so I'm feeling pretty good about this one, Jack.
No, I get it, but the number's backwards. The Panthers only have 6 sacks on defense. They've given up 11 sacks.
Right. I was going to point that out as well. Yeah, right. The 11 is what they've allowed there, correct? Which actually puts them as one of the worst teams in the league in that regard.
Right. And then outside of Brian Burns, they've had 6 total sacks on defense. Burns has 3 of them. Jeremy Chin, the safety, that's one of the guys that I was trying to get to earlier when I was saying the guys that are out. Jeremy, so he's out. Xavier Woods is their other starting safety. He's questionable, questionable. And then, like I said, Lulu, I think his name is the linebacker. I believe it is Lavu. Excuse me, not Lulu. Lavu. He's questionable as well. Woods and Louvu are their leading tacklers. So those guys having your leading tacklers, your top 2 leading tacklers, questionable going into this game, kind of leans a little bit more towards the 49ers side.
Yes, it does. I love it. I absolutely love it. Lean towards the 49ers side all you like in this one because I think we're going to get this W. I'm fired up for it. Jack, thank you so much for being on. I look forward to breaking down this game on Monday on your channel. I'm sure you have a couple of programs coming up this weekend on the channel. Anything exciting on the docket, sir?
Oh, I've got a pregame show before the game, and then
Nice.
I'll be coming on afterwards with my postgame show. I might switch some things around this week just to get on a little bit earlier after the game because usually it takes me about an hour or 2 after to write up my report before I jump on. We'll see. Maybe I can switch that around a little bit on Sunday because need to get a little more traction over on the channel, if you know what I mean.
Get that traction. I know exactly what you mean, my friend. Fable JVC coming in. Win ugly, just win. And we're closing out here. I'll just put this one up on the screen. Sean 951 Niners. Baker will have no time to operate. Picks, the defense scores. I'll take it. I will take it. Jack, always a pleasure having you on. I will see you on your channel on Monday. I am excited for this game on Sunday. I hope you have a wonderful time watching it. And until then, cheers, faithful.